LaxFactor podcast.
What is up, college lacrosse fans? You are watching episode 129 of the LaxFactor Lacrosse podcast, and today we have a bunch to talk about. We're going to go through Inside Lacrosse's calendar so far for Division I and just see what games we have scheduled. We'll talk about the early matchups a little bit. I want to talk about Air Force's schedule specifically because out of all the schedules that have been released so far, Air Force's is I can't imagine another team playing as much top tier talent as Air Force is going to be. So I want to talk about that a little bit. What else we got on here? Syracuse schedule, what we know so far, what we don't. I think we have about 8 games lined up that we know they're going to play, albeit it was really hard to see the copy of the schedule that I got. I want to talk about Inside Lacrosse's 5 sneaky teams to watch in 2021. A nice little slideshow that they threw up, and I agree with every selection across the board. I want to talk about Coach Reppert, set to become Holy Cross's head coach and what that means for Maryland in 2021 and beyond. And then Michigan and Vermont athletics got put on pause for 2 weeks. That covers all sports, at least at Michigan it does. So we'll talk about how that could play into lacrosse and what we could expect to see during the lacrosse season from that kind of thing. So before I get into it, as always, be sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share the video as much as you can. If it's one of the easiest ways you could support us is just share the video or hit that like button wherever it is. It's good. If you want to listen to the audio version anywhere they have podcasts, or our audio home is anchor.fm/LaxFactor. If you're watching this on YouTube, or if you're listening, you can go to youtube.com/LaxFactor and get the video version of this show because we have a video version up for those of you who don't know that yet after years. And then, as always, you can go to LaxFactor.com, get yourself swag. We have shorts. We have branded T-shirts. What else we got here? These are non-branded, just regular lacrosse T-shirts. It's the retro. So you can go to LaxFactor.com as well and support us that way. We have all our content up there also, although the content's a little bit slower going up there. So let's get into it. Ripping through the 2021 schedule / calendar. It looks like our very first lacrosse game so far of the season is going to come this upcoming weekend, Saturday, January 30th. We've got Mercer and Bellarmine. I presume that will be streamable from somewhere, so I know I'm going to be watching that. We'll also have the same day, Denver is scheduled to take on Utah. So 11 a.m. is the Mercer-Bellarmine game, so that's a big deal. Because that's the first one, and then the odd face-off time for Denver-Utah is 11:59, and then the following weekend, Friday, February 5th, we have Duke and Denver playing at 11:59 as well. So something with Denver and trying to schedule face-offs for 1 minute before noon. That's a little bit weird. But Mercer-Bellarmine, that's not going to excite a lot of people other than that's going to be our first lacrosse action. It has the feel not quite of the Denver-Utah game that kicked off the season 2 years ago. That had a little bit more excitement attached to it because it was not Denver. It was Utah, Vermont that played. And that had a little more excitement to it because it was Utah's first game as a lacrosse team, and it was that year our first game. This one's going to be exciting, though, just because we have lacrosse back. And then we get to see Denver and Utah play that same day. The following weekend, though, Duke-Denver. That's our first big marquee matchup. Duke-Denver at 11:59 on Friday, February 5th. I'm damn sure that's going to be streaming, probably, I would assume, on ESPN Plus at the absolute worst. So we'll probably get to watch that. And then that following Saturday, Notre Dame takes on Air Force. Mercer takes on, I don't know, Lenoir-Rhyne. I presume that's probably a D2 school somewhere. And then that Sunday, Duke takes on Robert Morris, and UNC flops, and they take on Denver. So the first handful of games we got, Mercer-Bellarmine on Saturday, January 30th, and Denver-Utah on that same day. Friday, February 5th, we've got Duke-Denver so far, and then Saturday, February 6th, we have Notre Dame, Air Force, Mercer, and Lenoir-Rhyne, and then Sunday, February 7th, we have Duke and Robert Morris, and then North Carolina and Denver. And then we go through, and we've got Jacksonville, Bellarmine. Then that following weekend, the second week in February 13th, that Saturday, we have a full slate of games. Delaware, Villanova, UNC Jacksonville, Denver Air Force, Duke Mercer, Marquette, Cleveland State, High Point, Bobby Moe. So we start getting into it come February 13th. So you guys, we have lacrosse and a lot of it coming at us here right around the corner, and that's just at the Division I level. And that's all I'm going to talk about today, but next week we'll get into D2, D3, and what it looks like is actually going to happen with their season. So that's a huge deal. Now, to pivot from that into this next thing, I want to talk about Air Force's schedule, because this is brutal, and I think everyone is going to agree with me. I sound like Donald Trump. Everyone's going to agree it's going to be huge. Air Force's schedule is brutal. Notre Dame on February 6th, followed up the next week by Denver, followed up the next week by Utah. So Utah, I mean, they're a solid team though, but Air Force, I think that's a winnable game, the Utah game. And hey, Air Force is good for upsetting some of these teams early in the season. So when I say a game is winnable, I mean you should win that game if you handle your business. So it doesn't mean when I say a game isn't winnable that it doesn't mean they couldn't win at all. It just means that it's not likely, and you got to pull the upset. That's what an upset is you win in an unwinnable situation. Notre Dame 2-6, Denver 2-13, Utah 2-20. Then Duke 2-27. Then Virginia 3-6, then Bobby Moe, another game those are two evenly matched teams. That Bobby Moe game is going to be a dogfight, and then UNC on 3-20. Then they have 4 winnable games in there: Bellarmine, Mercer, Jacksonville, VMI, before closing with High Point and Richmond. So it's got to be the toughest schedule in the nation in terms of here we are, and we're just punching up. It's got to be the toughest. 5 legit top 10 teams in Notre Dame, Denver, Duke, Virginia, and UNC. And I mean, a bunch of those teams could end up being top 5 teams. And then they finished the season off with High Point and Richmond. I think that's a conference game with High Point and Richmond. And both of those teams could potentially end up in the top 20 before the season's end. I think Richmond definitely will. And I think High Point has a very good chance of doing so as well. So yeah, that's brutal. 5 teams in the top 10. A couple of them will end up being top 3. And then finish off the season with 2 top 20 teams, or perennial lately top 20 teams. That is a really, really tough schedule. And in this season, where other teams aren't necessarily playing that really tough schedule because of, some of these other conferences that have to play each other, I guess the reality is the ACC is going to beat up on each other. The Big Ten's going to beat up on each other. So all of those teams where it's like you have legit top 20 teams that might end up with 500 records, I'm wondering how that's going to end up playing into the playoff scenarios. I would hope that they're going to say, hey, maybe you still got to keep that 500. You got to be above 500 to make the playoffs. But the problem's going to be in the ACC, for instance, it might finish below 500 who could legitimately still be a top 10, top 15 team, because the ACC is so top heavy. Not top heavy. The ACC is so spread out. So, I mean, you could end up, let's just say, I'm just throwing it out there, and I'm not going to use Syracuse as my example. So let's say Notre Dame is as good as they look on paper. Let's say they end up dropping. I'm trying to think. They're going to end up playing 4. I think they play 6 ACC games. What if they go 2-4 in their ACC matchups, and then they, split? I mean, Notre Dame could end up at 500 in that scenario, and what's that mean for their playoff hopes? It'll be tough, because I feel like you're going to end up having a team that's good in their conference that may end up having a watered down schedule, potentially making it into the tournament over a team that's sitting at 5-5 or 6-6 or something like that is far better. So it's going to be really tough for the tournament selection committee this year to try to get that right. And it might be impossible to a degree. We'll see how that goes. And I'm wondering how many teams are legit top 20 talent or top 15 talent that don't make the tournament because they just finish under 500. Will we see a team that legitimately deserves to be in the top 20, that legitimately should be one of the teams in the field and would be in a regular season, that aren't, because they like in the ACC, 2 of those non-conference games that you would normally play are now you're playing top 10 team instead. So it could hurt. It could hurt. We pivot from there into the Syracuse schedule and what we know. I got a copy of the Syracuse schedule, and it was really hard to read. It was tiny. But what I gathered from it and what's been confirmed so far, Army on 2/21 is the opener. I don't know if that's going to be Army's opener. We haven't seen their schedule yet. But on February 21st, Syracuse will open the season against Army, that's just tough. No tune-up game or anything like that. You're just getting right into playing a top 20 team that you only beat 9-7 last year in an absolute dogfight at the Dome. It looked like to me Albany was on there, and it would make sense that Albany would be on there, just a regular rival and an in-state rival. Travel times 2 hours on a bus, 2.5 hours on the bus. For whatever team has to travel. So I assumed that was there. I presumed Cornell would probably still be there, same reasons. If they were allowed to play out of conference games, they're just in state and it's closer. It's even closer than Albany, I believe, to Syracuse. But anyway, confirms Army, Albany is because I think I saw Albany on there. And then they play UVA twice, Notre Dame twice, UNC, Duke. So Syracuse's schedule, 8 games that we are pretty sure they have: Army, Albany, UVA, Notre Dame, UNC, Duke, and then UVA and Notre Dame, and then whoever fills it out. I think I did see 12 games on the schedule, so we just have to figure out who those other 4 games are against is all. But so that was semi-interesting, but it's not news yet until we see officially. And I want to say that a couple of other people shared me a screenshot, and it seemed like everybody was going off that same screenshot, so I'm not sure exactly. No one, I think, is really sure who exactly they needed to, who exactly they were playing. Next segment. I've started zoning out here as I was trying to move on to the next segment. Inside Lacrosse. It was Kinnear put out a 5 sneaky teams to watch in 2021 slideshow. So I just wanted to kind of rip through those because it gave us something to talk about here. And I agreed with all of them. The first team that he thought would be sneaky in 2021, sneaky, sir, would be, let's see here, I got to begin the slideshow here, Drexel. And to quote him here, it was Drexel was 3-3 last year, but its 3 losses were 1-goal setbacks to Albany, High Point, and St. Joseph's. They avenged the St. Joe's loss 2 days later, beating top 15 Villanova. It's also a team that was 2 goals shy of winning the CAA tournament in 2019. The point is Drexel's been close. They got and we're going to see this theme across all of these teams that he talks about here, is that they're all getting their 5th-year guys back. So these are teams that, finished middling last season, but if we had saw them get into their conference play, especially, you could have ended up seeing some of these teams finish 2, 3, 4 games above 500 and could have surprised some people. So Drexel's right there. Their 5th-year guys that they got back: Reed Bowering, Matt Varian, Colin Mailman, with Mailman. That's just a dope name. Mailman, I'd call him the Mailman. Luke Hurley and Jimmy Coida. I don't know, man. That's a funny name. That's a good mix, as he says. But anyway, yeah, I agree that. And I agree too that he talks about how UMass is the lock, seems to be a lock in the CAA. And then the rest of the teams that fill out below him, you could put them in any order. Drexel could potentially be that team to finish second in that conference, or at least be right up there in the top half. Another team, another CAA team, nonetheless, is he talks about Fairfield, and I agree. Fairfield has been pretty solid the last couple of years, and what Kinnear specifically says, to quote C. Point Pryor about the CAA, another CAA team: Fairfield, like Drexel, might be sneaking under the radar in the league, but they're a threat. Dylan Beckwith, the dynamic lefty, is in contention for CAA Player of the Year. Add Matt Chlastawa as a do-it-all go-to guy with Beckwith and Brian Retta. That's a good group. And Travis Ford can shoot from the midfield, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, Fairfield, and I agree with that too. And once again, it just comes into we're going to see this with a lot of these conferences where these guys are going to beat up on each other, and some of them are going to bite others in the ass. You end up, maybe because it's a conference game, with some of these teams at middle overachieving against their conference foe in these rivalry games and maybe picking up some wins, a couple extra wins even, that they might not have gotten if they were playing out of conference games against either tougher foes or, just someone else that could upset them. Another team that he mentioned was Bucknell, and I agree. Where I disagree with him is he's saying, despite the loss of Will York, that Bucknell is still going to be dangerous. I agree. Bucknell plays tough. They play smart. They're a very blue-collar style team, considering it's not necessarily a blue-collar school. And I like that. But my problem with Bucknell is Will York was a big part of the success that they had, and now he's going to be rocking for Notre Dame next year. Just another reason that Notre Dame is going to be solid. So I think that Bucknell, they always play tough, and I think that they're always a team you got to watch out for, especially within conference, and when you play them out of conference. But I think that losing Will York actually sets them back a little bit more than Kinnear is assuming here. And another one, the Mount. We've been talking about the Mount a lot, Mount St. Mary's, and they are also tough. They almost beat Hopkins last year, and I remember at the time that happening, everyone was like, "Oh my God, the Mount almost beat Hopkins." And I think the Mount played Hopkins semi-tough the year before as well at the Mount, but the reality ended up being we saw Hopkins was kind of having a down year. We had an unhealthy Joey Epstein. So, but I do agree here. They've got their face-off specialist, Sam Steffen, and Dylan Fernback, who is an actual pretty solid goalie. I think Fernback was he was a transfer from Furman, maybe. I could be wrong, though. Maybe I'm just mixing that up. But Fernback, I've talked about him a handful of times, and he's a solid keeper. So you got that 1-2 punch of getting possessions consistently, and then having a guy in cage that can stop balls where he's not supposed to. He's definitely good for a couple of saves a game at least that are where he's robbing his opponents. That's a good mix. And then once again, bunch of fifth-year guys coming back, so that's always going to help. And that was the end of his list. I thought there was 5 teams in there. I think I only talked about 4. But let's segue from there into Reppert. Reppert is ditching Maryland, and it's big news for Holy Cross because Holy Cross picks up a very solid head coach, but it's bad news for Maryland in the sense that they lose their offensive coordinator. I know what I liked about Reppert, and I think he's been coaching there since 2015. He's been there for a handful of years anyway. Is Maryland recruits a lot, and I don't know how much of this is by design and how much of this is just the best guys in the country happen to be triple threats, and Maryland gets a lot of the best guys in the country versus how much of this is a very specific recruiting angle. But Maryland seems to pick up a lot of triple threats in the sense that when you look at their offense, and they kind of, a lot of people call it like the positionless offense, where they have guys floating all over the field, guys are dodging from all sorts of different places. You don't have that off-ball sniper that's just what that guy does. You have a bunch of triple threats, guys that can dodge and carry the ball, guys that can feed and actually distribute the ball, but then guys that are also very capable of scoring the rock as well. That's the triple threat, because a guy who can dodge, being able to dodge successfully and get separation does not automatically mean you're going to put up a bunch of goals. A guy like Nakai Montgomery at Duke, he's a guy who has struggled with shooting accuracy and putting up goal numbers, despite the fact that almost every time he goes to the rack, he's able to turn heads, draw slides, and things of that sort. And he's become a fairly capable feeder as well. But my point being, Maryland in 2021, will this affect them? How will this affect Maryland's offensive flow in 2021? And I don't think it will that much. I mean, when you're a good teacher like Reppert is, you teach these guys a system, and the guys that are there right now still know that system. They're not going to change this offense based on who comes in. They may add some new wrinkles and some new angles that they attack from and things like that from it. But I think in 2021, they're going to continue with the system he's put in place, and whatever offensive coordinator will come in, you'll see them add their flavor to the offense a little bit. So I don't think it's going to hurt them in 2021. And then in the future, what's it mean? Lucky for Maryland, there is absolutely no shortage of Maryland alums, Maryland guys, Baltimore guys that are willing to come in and take that position. So they are going to be able to pick from the cream of the crop in terms of offensive brain power. So I think Maryland long-term is going to be fine as well. So I don't think it's going to be a huge deal. Great news for Holy Cross, though, because this dude really does know his shit. So that's good. And what we are going to close with today, and this kind of, we'll do a little COVID talk here. Word came out, I think it was last night, that Michigan and Vermont, both their entire athletic departments are on a 2-week pause. So we've seen this happen within like the Syracuse basketball team. And I'm not sure with Syracuse if it was when they were going on the 2-week pauses, because I think Syracuse basketball has had 2 of those, like 4 weeks of pause right now. One coming right before the season kicked off, and another coming, after a couple weeks of play. I don't know if that went full athletic department level, though, but Michigan and Vermont are apparently everything. So Michigan basketball done for 2 weeks. They don't start playing again until February 6th, I think, and Vermont is apparently the same. So what can we take from this, and how will we, when we see this type of thing, how will that play into lacrosse? Well, I would say by default, at the base level, lacrosse rosters are bigger than basketball rosters. So I think that kind of makes it a little harder to control the spread once it hits. But lacrosse is also an outside sport. So there's not nearly as much close contact in lacrosse as there is in basketball with that smaller roster. So that plays. I also presume that maybe the lacrosse rosters are a lot larger, but I'm wondering if the staff that goes into maintaining those teams is it makes a difference in basketball, because I'd presume for some of these basketball schools, the staff and the people around the program that contribute to the machine going might end up equaling out with between roster staff with lacrosse roster and staff. But I think we're going to see this. I don't envision a world in which any team makes it through unscathed without having a game postponed. I think that where some of these teams are trying to put up a 12, 13, 14 game schedules, maybe they're hedging their bet and they're starting to think, okay, hey, we're going to probably have 3 of these games postponed, but we still got a solid 12 game schedule without having to reschedule and flummox things up, because I would presume that rescheduling comes with its own risks in terms of if you're trying to spread out and play once a week so you can be tested the morning of the game, get your answer back, and then play safely and then rinse and repeat. If you start having to pop games into the middle of the week, there's going to be added risk there. It's just a matter of exposure. The more you're exposed without separation in between, the better the chance you have some cross-team pollinization of the virus, cross-team contamination. So I think that we are going to see almost every team in the country have at least a game get postponed or canceled because of COVID. But I think basketball is doing pretty good in the sense that they're handling it and they're still playing and they're rescheduling games, and it looks like they're going to get their season in and get to the championship. I would like to see everybody get their full schedule in. I would like to see everybody get 10 plus games in, as all these teams normally do. I would like to see the Ivy contribute. I'm hoping some of the outcry is going to help. I don't know that it will, though. I just want them to get to the championship. Let's say Cuse has a 12-game schedule and they have to hit a 2-week hiatus, or Duke has to hit a 2-week hiatus. I would still like to see, like in college football for the Big Ten, where Ohio State only got 6 regular season games in before the playoffs. I would like to see, even if that happens for teams, that we still get into the tournament and we have that championship weekend. And but we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. This is all stupid. COVID sucks. I know that there's the people who think COVID is all bullshit, and that this is all bullshit and we should just toughen up. And man, I see your side. And then I know the people that are totally COVID scared, and I understand being neurotic and being scared at that level too. And then you have all us people in the middle that are just like, what the fuck do you do? It's such a tough position to be in, because colleges are businesses, and from a liability standpoint, you don't want liability. Liability is bad. And if the colleges are fearing, if some shit goes down and we're the team that has the kid get sick that dies with COVID, what's that going to mean for lawsuits and liability and all the other crap? So that it's not simple. Anyone who tries to just say, shut the fuck up and let them play, I mean, I get it. And I like your fire. I like your bravery, because, some people that say that are probably stupid, but there's a lot of people that say that are by no means stupid, and they are just braver than everybody else. So I don't want to slam those people. And then in the other sense, there's people who run a little bit more scared than other people. And that's a viable way to get through this earth. Listen, we live on a rock that is trying to kill us. We live in a system. We're on a rock floating in the middle of space, traveling through space at 144,000 miles per hour or some crazy shit, rotating like 25,000 miles per hour or some shit. So everything that speaks, the fact that we're even here running around is an absolute blessing, and it's crazy considering that the planet is doing everything it can at all times to try to kill us. So let's not be mean to each other about this shit. I do get on the people who are super hard, COVID police, and I get on the people a little bit that are super hard anti-COVID even being a thing, because on the extremes, I think we need to bully the people on the extremes a little bit. That's the truth. I use the word bully, but it's the truth. We want a better America, we need to tell the people on the far left and the people on the far right to shut the fuck up, because all of us people in the middle that are reasonable, that just want to figure out a way to coexist and get along, we need to do that, and we need to tell the people in the fringes to go get fucked. So that's my political rant And I think that if I ever do get into political rants, I will always try to keep them at the end of the podcast, where I'm pretty sure only about 100, 200 people or so are going to be able to actually listen to it, because I know all, the 1,000 plus that listen to me every week, you guys aren't making it all to the end. But I know there are, for a fact, 200-300 people I can see through data that do make it the full 30 minutes right to the end. So I thank you guys, though, for sticking with me on this. And anyone who made it this far into the podcast, that's the question of the week. What do you think? Are you COVID scared? Are you COVID in the middle, where I think most of us should try to be, no matter what our affinities try to push us to? Or are you COVID crazy on the far right? Far left, far right, middle. What are you? That is the question of the week. And we'll be back, probably put something out in the middle of the week here as we gear up. We're going to do the Saturday morning show leading into the 2 games. So we're going to do a live stream Saturday morning leading into the Bellarmine, Mercer, whoever's playing that first game. We're going to preview those 2 games and the games for that whole weekend. And then next weekend, we'll do the Sunday show. So moving forward, Saturday morning live stream. It'll be before the games start, probably about 10 a.m. Saturday morning live stream, and then Sunday full show. And then during the week, you get what you get. So as always, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Go to LaxFactor.com to get yourself swag. Support us beyond that. If you listen to the audio version, it lives at anchor.fm/LaxFactor, but it is everywhere that you find podcasts, Spotify, Apple, and the rest. And if you're a listener and you want to watch, you can go to youtube.com/LaxFactor. But we do put these videos up now on Instagram, Facebook, and everywhere else as well. So find us wherever we are. Find us where you are. And as always, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And Hoost is out. Boom, boom, boom.